My boyfriend asked me to pay $82,000 for our dream home, until the title company revealed I didn't own a single inch of it. My name is Natalie Carter. I'm 32 years old, and until one phone call turned my life upside down, I believed 6 years of sacrifice had finally brought me to the future I'd worked so hard to build. Looking back, I know the betrayal didn't begin the day I discovered my name was missing from the mortgage. It had started months earlier. I just didn't see it. For 6 years, I worked double shifts at a warehouse while everyone around me seemed to be moving forward. Friends took vacations, co-workers upgraded their cars, and social media was filled with engagements and expensive weekends away. I kept telling myself that every dollar I didn't spend brought me one step closer to owning a home. I drove a 15-year-old Honda, packed my lunch almost every day, skipped vacations, and delayed every unnecessary purchase because I believed those sacrifices would eventually pay off. By the time I turned 32, I'd saved just over $80,000. It wasn't luck or inheritance. Every dollar came from overtime, missed weekends, and years of discipline. I wasn't saving for luxury. I was saving for a home and a future with the man I loved. His name was Ethan Brooks. We'd been together for 4 years and living in my apartment for the last 2. Ethan worked in marketing and earned a good salary, but we couldn't have been more different when it came to money. He enjoyed spending freely, while I mentally turned every unnecessary purchase into another mortgage payment. It became one of our running jokes. "I'm the boring one," I'd tease. He'd smile, kiss my forehead, and reply, "You're the reason we'll actually retire someday." I believed him. Our different spending habits never worried me because I thought they balanced each other out. 3 months before everything fell apart, we found our dream house. It had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a quiet street lined with maple trees, and a backyard perfect for summer barbecues. At $340,000, it finally felt like my years of saving had a purpose. We walked through every room, imagining our future. "I want this wall painted warm gray," Ethan said, squeezing my hand. I laughed. "You've already picked the paint?" "I've been thinking about it." I pointed to the smallest bedroom. "My reading room." He smiled. "We're really doing this." That sentence stayed with me long after we left. That night, we celebrated with takeout on the floor of my apartment and spent hours talking about furniture, Christmas decorations, and the life we thought we were about to start. Nothing about those conversations felt fake. A few days later, Ethan told me his cousin Marcus worked for a mortgage company. "He can probably get us a better rate," he said. "You've been working 60-hour weeks. Let me handle the paperwork." I was relieved. After weeks of overtime, handing the paperwork to someone I trusted felt like one less thing to worry about. I gave Ethan everything he needed: my tax returns, pay stubs, employment records, bank statements, and proof that my savings would cover the down payment. Looking back, that was probably the biggest mistake I ever made. Over the next several weeks, Ethan kept assuring me everything was moving smoothly. Every few days, Ethan had another update. The inspection passed, the appraisal came back fine, and underwriting was moving faster than expected. Whenever I asked to see the documents, he'd open his laptop and scroll through inspection reports, loan estimates, and disclosures. Everything looked perfectly normal. At least that's what I believed. Only later did I realize he never left any page on the screen long enough for me to read it. Whenever the top of a document showed the applicant's information, he'd scroll past it almost immediately. At the time, I never questioned it. Why would I? I trusted the man I thought I was going to marry. One evening, I asked why I hadn't received any emails from the mortgage company. Without looking up from dinner, Ethan said, "Marcus has everything sent to my work email. It's easier to keep it organized." The explanation sounded reasonable, so I let it go. 4 days before closing, my phone rang in the middle of a warehouse shift. Normally, I ignored unknown numbers, but something made me answer. "Hi, is this Natalie Carter? This is Rebecca from the title company handling your closing." I smiled automatically. "We just need one final document," she said. "Since the $82,000 down payment is coming from your account, you'll need to sign a gift letter confirming the funds are a gift to Mr. Ethan Brooks." My smile disappeared. "A gift letter?" "Yes. I think you have the wrong file." Rebecca hesitated. "I have Natalie Carter providing the down payment, but you're not listed on the mortgage application or the property title." For a moment, I couldn't speak. "What?" "The only purchaser on the application is Ethan Brooks." For a second, I couldn't hear anything else. "That can't be right." "If you were supposed to be a co-borrower, this is a serious issue," Rebecca said gently. "Closing is only 4 days away." I ended the call in a daze and immediately searched every email account I had. Nothing. No messages from the lender. No underwriting updates. No mortgage documents. Every communication had gone through Ethan. Then I remembered how he'd always rush through the paperwork whenever he showed it to me, scrolling past the top of each page before I could read the names. It hadn't seemed suspicious then. Now it explained everything. I checked my banking app. The money was still in my account, untouched. He couldn't access it unless I authorized the wire transfer on closing day. I left work early and drove straight home. Ethan was in the kitchen holding paint samples. "There you are," he said with a smile. "I think this gray would look perfect in our bedroom." I quietly closed the front door. I got a call from the title company. His smile froze for the briefest moment before returning. "What about?" "They told me I'm not buying the house." He stared at me. I set my purse on the table. "Why am I being asked to give you $80,000 for a house that legally belongs only to you?" He forced a laugh. "That can't be right. They probably mixed up the paperwork. They asked me to sign a gift letter." His expression changed. "A gift saying the down payment belongs to you." He slowly set the paint samples down. "I'll call him tomorrow." I stepped closer. "So my name disappeared from the mortgage because someone checked the wrong box?" "It happens. I'll call Marcus tomorrow." I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling the title company now." He caught my wrist before I could dial. "They're closed. Let's deal with it tomorrow." I glanced at his hand until he let go. "I don't want you worrying over something that's probably nothing." A bead of sweat rolled down his forehead. The apartment was cool. He wasn't sweating because of the temperature. He was sweating because he'd been caught. Ignoring him, I called the after-hours number and asked Rebecca one question. "Whose name is on the mortgage application?" After a few seconds of typing, she answered. "The sole applicant is Ethan Brooks. There are no additional borrowers." "No co-owner?" "No. My name isn't anywhere?" "I'm sorry, Ms. Carter, it isn't." I thanked her and hung up. The apartment was silent. Neither of us spoke for several seconds before I finally broke it. "Explain." Ethan stared at the floor for several seconds before taking a slow breath. "I thought I was doing what was best for us." I folded my arms and waited. "My credit score is higher," Ethan finally said. "Marcus thought approval would be easier if the mortgage was only under my name. And after closing, we were going to add you." I stared at him. "That's really your explanation?" "It's the truth." "No, it's the excuse you came up with after getting caught." "I spent 6 years saving that money, Ethan. You expected me to transfer $82,000 into a house I didn't legally own." "You would have been on the house later." "How?" He hesitated. "We would have figured it out." I shook my head. "You don't accidentally figure out property ownership after closing. Marcus works in mortgages. You both know that." "I wasn't trying to cheat you." "Then why hide it?" He looked away. I kept putting the conversation off. "You avoided telling me the truth." He sighed. "It was still supposed to be our home." "No," I said quietly. "It would have been your house. I just would have paid for it." When I asked why the title company wanted me to sign a gift letter, he immediately blamed Marcus. I trusted him. I nodded. "So first it was because the application would be easier. Then it was your credit score. Then you forgot to tell me. Now it's Marcus." Every explanation contradicted the last one. He stepped closer. "Natalie, I'm sorry. You shouldn't be apologizing." I met his eyes. "You should have put my name on the paperwork." Tears filled his eyes. "I was trying to protect us." "From what?" "The mortgage process." "And if we broke up?" His face froze. "We weren't going to." I asked what would have happened. He couldn't answer. His silence told me more than words ever could. I gathered the stack of paperwork from the table, straightened it, and set it aside. "I'm done talking tonight." For the next hour, he followed me through the apartment, offering a different explanation every few minutes. First it was Marcus's idea, then the lender's. Then he claimed he wanted to protect me from stress. Finally, he admitted he'd been afraid I'd overreact. The more he talked, the less believable he became. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying 4 years of memories, wondering how long he'd been planning a future that didn't include me. The next morning, I canceled the wire transfer with the title company, secured my bank account with additional verification, and scheduled a meeting with a real estate attorney. It cost me $400. It was the best money I'd spent in months. After hearing the entire story, the attorney asked only 3 questions. "Did you sign the purchase agreement?" "No." "The mortgage?" "No." "Any document promising him your savings?" "No." He nodded. "Then legally, the money is still yours. A verbal discussion about buying a house doesn't give him ownership of your bank account." The relief was immediate. Before leaving his office, I changed every password connected to my finances. When I got home, Ethan was waiting. "The title company called," he said quietly. "They told me you canceled the transfer." "I did." He looked at me helplessly. "So what happens now?" "The deal is over." His face drained of color. "You can't do this." "I already did." He begged me to reconsider, insisting we could still fix everything. I shook my head. "You hid the mortgage application, expected me to pay for a house I didn't own, and only apologized after I found out. I was going to fix it. You had 2 months. I'm sorry." The apology wasn't enough anymore. "You need to move out." He stared at me in disbelief. "We can still close." "No. I'll put your name on everything." "You should have done that before asking for my money." His frustration boiled over. "You'd throw away 4 years over paperwork?" "I'm ending this because you lied." He immediately called his father. An hour later, Ethan's father stormed into my apartment. "I've heard Ethan's side," he said. "You're blowing this out of proportion." I stayed calm. "Did he tell you the mortgage only had his name on it?" He hesitated. "It was temporary." "And did he mention my $80,000 was supposed to become a gift?" "That's just paperwork." "No. I replied. That's ownership. He dismissed my concern, insisting I was ruining Ethan's future. I asked him one question. If it were your retirement savings, would you put them into a house you didn't legally own? He never answered. Instead, he muttered, a man has to take initiative. This wasn't initiative, I said. It was deception. For the first time since the argument began, I noticed Ethan standing quietly behind his father. He wasn't defending himself anymore. He was letting everyone else fight his battle for him. His father stepped closer. Do you know what I really think? I think you're scared, and now you're sabotaging both your futures. I held his gaze. No, I'm protecting mine. Ethan's father let out an impatient sigh. One day you're going to regret throwing away a good man over paperwork. I held his gaze. If Ethan had secretly bought a house in his own name using your retirement savings, would you still call it paperwork? Neither he nor Ethan answered. That silence told me everything. A moment later, Ethan picked up the duffel bag he'd packed during the argument. I love you, he said quietly. I didn't answer. After waiting a few seconds, he lowered his head and followed his father out. When the door closed, I noticed the paint samples we'd argued over only the night before. I picked them up, dropped them into the trash, and watched the future we'd imagined disappear with them. The next morning, Ethan's mother called in tears. She begged me to reconsider, insisting Ethan had only made one mistake. He didn't make one mistake, I said. He spent months hiding legal documents while expecting me to pay for a house that legally belonged only to him. She tried a different approach. The whole family already knows about the house. Do you realize how embarrassing this is? Maybe they should have thought about that before asking me to finance a house I didn't own. She insisted Ethan had only been trying to take care of us. By putting only his name on the deed, she couldn't answer. Instead, she warned me the seller was threatening legal action and pleaded with me to send the money anyway. My answer is still no. I was never buying that house. After I hung up, the messages started. Messages poured in from his sister, cousins, old friends, and even people I barely recognized. Every one of them said the same thing in different words. I was overreacting, Ethan was sorry, and relationships required compromise. One message stood out. You'll never find another man who loves you this much. I locked my phone. Love isn't asking someone to spend $80,000 for the privilege of owning nothing. I blocked nearly every number. Friday, the day we were supposed to close, arrived. Instead of signing mortgage papers, I sat alone in a quiet sports bar while my phone filled with messages. The deal collapsed. The seller kept the earnest money. They're suing me. Finally came the message I knew was coming. Please, we can still fix this if you send the money. I replied with one word. No. A few seconds later, another text appeared. This is your fault. Then another. You've ruined my life. I put my phone away. The relationship had ended the moment I learned my name wasn't on the mortgage. Everything happening now was simply the consequence of Ethan's own decisions. After lunch, I drove straight to my landlord's office. I need the locks changed. My ex-boyfriend won't be living with me anymore. That afternoon, the locks were replaced. When I unlocked the apartment with my new keys that evening, I realized I was finally the only person who could walk through that front door. I expected things to quiet down after that. Instead, they were only beginning. When I arrived at work the following Monday, I braced myself for whispers and curious stares, but no one seemed to know what had happened. I threw myself into another long shift and almost convinced myself life was returning to normal. Everything felt normal again until Thursday afternoon. Reception called to say someone was waiting for me in the lobby. When I walked downstairs, I found Lindsay, one of Ethan's closest friends, standing with her arms crossed. So this is who you really are, she said. I'm not sure what you mean. You destroyed Ethan's future. I protected my own. She scoffed. He found the house, handled the mortgage, and did all the work. All you had to do was send the money. My money. We were building a future. No, I said. He was building one for himself. She took a step closer. You know what? He was planning to leave you anyway. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. What? Her expression changed immediately. I shouldn't have said that. No, I replied. You absolutely should. After a long pause, she sighed. He told me months ago that everything would be easier once the house closed. What does that mean? He planned to wait until after you moved in. She looked away. He didn't want to lose the down payment. The words echoed in my head. In that moment, I realized he hadn't been afraid of losing me. He'd been afraid of losing the money. Lindsay immediately realized what she'd admitted. I didn't mean it like that. He was just frustrated. I held her gaze. So the plan was to make sure the house belonged to him first, then end the relationship? She never answered. She didn't have to. Thank you, I said quietly. She frowned. For what? For telling me the truth. I didn't. You did. Without another word, she turned and walked away. For days, I'd been trying to convince myself Ethan had made a terrible mistake. Now I understood it wasn't a mistake at all. Leaving my name off the mortgage wasn't a shortcut. It was an exit strategy. He wanted the house. He wanted my money. He just didn't want me. That realization made every memory from the past 4 years feel different. The following week brought another wave of problems. My Instagram account was suddenly suspended. Someone tried accessing my email from another state, my insurance company called about a claim I'd never filed, and my bank reported several failed login attempts. None of those incidents proved Ethan was responsible, but together they convinced me to secure every account I owned, enable two-factor authentication, and save copies of every security alert. 3 days later, I came home with groceries and found Ethan sitting on my couch. He stood immediately. "I just want to talk." "How did you get in?" "I came over before the locks were changed. I left the groceries on the counter but stayed near the door." "You have 5 minutes." He seemed exhausted. "I've had a lot of time to think. I should have told you the truth from the beginning." "I'm willing to believe that. But it doesn't explain why you hid it from me." He sighed. "I never thought it would turn into this." "It turned into this because you lied." After a long silence, he admitted something he'd never said before. "There was another reason. I waited. You always controlled the money. I know it was your savings, but after a while it felt like I didn't own anything." His voice broke. "I wanted one thing that was mine." I nodded slowly. "So you wanted the house?" "Yes. And you wanted me to pay for it." "I wasn't thinking about it like that." "I think you were." He started to argue, then stopped. He didn't have an answer. Because deep down he knew I was right. The truth was already hanging between us. "So your solution," I asked quietly, "was to leave my name off the paperwork and make sure I had no legal claim to the house?" Ethan covered his face. "I know how it looks." "No," I replied. "You finally know how it felt." After a long silence, he looked up again. "The seller's suing me. They want more than $30,000. My credit is ruined, and I probably won't even qualify for another apartment." Then he finally said what he'd really come to ask. "I need $20,000. "There it is." "It wouldn't be a gift," he said quickly. "I'd pay you back. I'd sign whatever agreement you wanted." I gave him a tired smile. "It's amazing how willing you are to sign paperwork now." He lowered his eyes. "I deserve that." "Yes. But please, I'm drowning." "You put yourself there." "I made one mistake." I shook my head. "No. You lied for months, hid legal documents, expected me to finance a house I didn't own, blamed me after you were caught, and now you're asking me to pay for the consequences. That's not one mistake." He raised his voice. "You always have to control everything." "No," I replied calmly. "I just refuse to let you control me." He threw a couch cushion across the room. "I was trying to build us a future. You were trying to build one that belonged only to you." His anger quickly turned into frustration. "You're going to regret this." "I already regret trusting you." When he kicked one of the dining chairs across the floor, I took out my phone. "I'm calling the police." His expression changed immediately. Instead of arguing, he grabbed his jacket. "This isn't over." The door slammed behind him. 10 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. I showed them Ethan's messages and explained that he no longer had permission to enter my apartment. They advised me to file a formal trespass report so there would be a record if he returned. Before leaving, one of the officers paused and said, "People rarely become someone else overnight. Most of the time, you simply find out who they've been all along." A week later, another surprise was waiting in my mailbox. It was a lawsuit. Ethan was suing me for the $80,000. I called my attorney immediately. The next morning, he read the complaint, smiled in disbelief, and shook his head. "This is one of the weakest cases I've seen in years." He asked only 3 questions. "Did you transfer the money?" "No." "Did you sign the gift letter?" "No." "Did you sign any agreement promising him the down payment?" "No." He closed the file. "Then he has no legal claim to your savings." We gathered bank statements, tax returns, my lease, utility bills, and months of text messages. The strongest evidence came from Ethan himself. Months earlier, he'd texted, "Don't touch your house money. We'll need it at closing." Another message read, "I can't wait to finally use your down payment fund." Those texts clearly showed he knew the money belonged to me. My attorney smiled. "I don't think he'll enjoy explaining these in court." By the morning of the hearing, I wasn't nervous anymore. I just wanted it to be over. Ethan looked completely different when he entered the courtroom. He'd lost weight, his confidence was gone, and his parents quietly took seats behind him while his attorney prepared the case. His lawyer argued that we'd planned to buy a house together and had verbally agreed to use my savings for the down payment. He claimed my decision to cancel the transfer just before closing caused Ethan significant financial losses. My attorney didn't dispute that we'd planned a future together. What changed, he told the judge, was that my client discovered she wasn't listed anywhere on the mortgage application or the property title despite being expected to provide the entire down payment. He submitted the mortgage records, title company documents, my bank statements, and Ethan's own text messages. The judge reviewed everything before looking at Ethan. "Mr. Brooks, do you have any written agreement giving you ownership of Miss Carter's savings?" "No, Your Honor." "Did she ever sign a gift letter or any document promising you those funds?" "No." After a brief glance toward Ethan's attorney, who confirmed there was no additional evidence, the judge closed the file. Planning to buy a home together does not transfer ownership of someone's private savings. The evidence clearly shows Ms. Carter was excluded from the mortgage and title while being expected to provide the down payment. She had every legal right to refuse the transfer. He looked directly at Ethan. This court finds no legal basis for your claim. One strike of the gavel ended the case. Case dismissed. Outside the courthouse, Ethan's father stopped me before I reached my car. You happy now? I wasn't the one who filed the lawsuit. You destroyed my son. No, I replied calmly. He destroyed his own future. He insisted the money should have belonged to both of us. It could have, I answered, if my name had been on the paperwork. Before he could respond, Ethan's mother hurried over with tears in her eyes. We borrowed against our retirement to pay his legal fees, she admitted quietly. The news genuinely surprised me. You really thought this lawsuit would work? His father lowered his eyes. Our lawyer said there was a chance. I felt sorry for them, but that didn't change anything. I'm sorry you're going through this, I said. But Ethan made these decisions, and you chose to support him. I walked away. That evening, Ethan texted me. Hope you're proud of yourself. I replied only once. I'm proud that I protected myself. His final message read, You're going to end up alone. I answered without hesitation. Being alone is better than spending my life as someone's bank account. He never contacted me again. For a while, I thought that was finally the end. I was wrong. 3 days later, security called my supervisor after someone forced their way into the warehouse. When I turned around, Ethan was walking straight toward me. He looked exhausted. I just need 5 minutes. You need to leave. My parents paid the $32,000 settlement, he said quietly. They used part of their retirement because of me. I kept working. You could have stopped this. No. You could have sent the money. You wanted me to pay for a house that belonged only to you. His jaw tightened. I wanted our future. You wanted all the protection while I carried all the risk. Without warning, he grabbed my wrist. I lost everything. Security reached us almost immediately. I pulled my hand free. You didn't lose everything because I refused to pay. I held his gaze. You lost everything because you thought I'd never read the paperwork. Security escorted him out without another word. Watching him disappear through the warehouse doors, I realized something had changed. The anger was gone. So was the guilt. All that remained was acceptance. A week later, Marcus sent me a message. You're vindictive. You trapped Ethan and destroyed his future. I replied once. I have the title company records, the court documents, and every text message. Tell whatever story you want. I'll tell the truth. A minute later, he blocked me. That was the last time I ever heard from him. I thought the drama was finally over. Then Lindsay called. She admitted Ethan couldn't afford everything anymore before asking if I'd loan him $10,000. I almost laughed. Lindsay, he lied for months. Hid legal documents, sued me, showed up at my apartment, and even came to my workplace. That's not one mistake. She was quiet for several seconds before whispering, I've never seen him this broken. I was broken first. That ended the conversation. A month after the hearing, my attorney called with the news I'd been waiting for. The case had been dismissed with prejudice. Ethan could never sue me over the same claim again. Through mutual friends, I learned what happened afterward. His parents paid most of the $32,000 settlement by borrowing against their retirement. Ethan's credit collapsed, he moved back in with them, and constant arguments over money followed. At work, he lost his client-facing position, took a pay cut, and the expensive lifestyle he'd once enjoyed disappeared almost overnight. My life moved in the opposite direction. I stopped working endless overtime, spent quiet evenings cooking or sitting on my balcony, and slowly realized my apartment no longer felt lonely. It felt peaceful. One afternoon, I ran into Ethan at a grocery store. Stress had aged him. We made eye contact. Neither of us spoke. We simply walked away. That night, he sent one final message. He admitted he'd convinced himself he wasn't stealing from me, only protecting his future, and apologized for destroying everything we'd built. I read it twice before deleting it. His apology couldn't restore trust or erase months of deception. I blocked the number. There was nothing left to say. A few days later, my attorney asked me a simple question over lunch. Do you feel like you won? I thought for a moment. I don't think anyone won. So how do you feel? Finished. That was the only word that fit. The fight was over. The $80,000 was still safely in my account, and I had already started looking for another home. This time I wanted something modest, something I could afford on my own without depending on anyone else's promises. One evening, my mother asked if I still felt guilty. A little, I admitted, mostly because of his parents. She squeezed my hand. Guilt and responsibility aren't the same thing. She was right. Protecting myself hadn't been cruel. It had been necessary. A few weeks later, one of my supervisors asked if I'd like to get coffee sometime. He accepted my answer without pressure when I told him I wasn't ready. That simple moment reminded me what respect actually looked like. That was the moment I realized something had changed inside me. What truly scared me was spending my life beside someone who saw my love, my trust, and my hard work as something to take advantage of. A few weeks later, I drove past the neighborhood where our dream house had been. Another family had already moved in. Their car sat in the driveway. Lights glowed through the windows, and for a brief moment, I imagined the life I once believed Ethan and I would build there. Then I smiled and kept driving. I wasn't leaving my future behind. I was leaving the future that was never meant for me. The next house I buy will belong to me, because every document will carry my name from the very beginning. There won't be hidden paperwork, secret applications, or promises that exist only until someone gets what they want. People still tell me Ethan made a mistake. I don't see it that way. A mistake happens in an instant. What Ethan did took planning. He completed the paperwork, hid the truth, waited until my money was about to be transferred, and only admitted anything after he realized I'd found out. That wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. The only reason it failed was because one employee at the title company made a routine phone call. That single call saved me $80,000. More importantly, it saved me from building a life with someone who had already planned a way out. He thought he was taking my future. Instead, he lost his own. As for me, the next chapter of my life will begin with something he never gave me: honesty.